I'm Jessica, and I'm joined today by Steve, who's got some information about his family on the First World War.
Right. Good afternoon, Jessica.
Good afternoon, Steve.
Right.
So, have you any family in the First World War?
Yeah, I've got two people. One was a great uncle, and one was my grandfather. And I think what we'll start with is I'll tell you about my grandfather, because I actually met my grandfather, but I never met my great uncle. My grandfather joined a regiment called the Gloucestershire Regiment, which were based down Bristol way. He joined the 7th Battalion, which was a territorial regiment, which are volunteers. We know why we have the territorial army now, the volunteers. And he went and served with the Gloucesters in Gallipoli, and then they went to a place called Mesopotamia. And Mesopotamia is known now today as Iraq and Iran. And as you know, we still have soldiers in Iraq and Iran. In March 1917, they came across this big battle where the regiment was pinned down, and they was trying to gain ground of 400 yards, or 400 metres. So you imagine how far that is. Not far, is it?
No.
And they couldn't even make that. They was fighting the Turks, so the Ottoman Empire, yeah? So they couldn't actually get 400 yards. So people run 400 metres, 400 yards in so many seconds now, don't they? And they couldn't do it because the Turks had them pinned down by machine guns. And every time they tried to make the dash to get where they was machine gunned. Consequently, my grandfather was machine gunned. He was shot in both of his legs. He was picked up, taken back, and he came home, and he actually survived the war. So we can say he was one of the lucky ones.
So when did he join the war?
He joined the army in 1915.
How old was he when he joined?
He was 19 years old when he joined. So he was pretty young, really. And because he joined in 1915, he was presented with 3 medals, which every soldier in the First World War got medals, but he got the 3 medals, and he got these medals. Yeah, and the medals are the Star, the Victory, and the Empire Medal. So that's pictures of what medals he would have won. I'll just show the camera again.
Didn't you say before that you had 2 families in the First World War?
Yeah, like I had a great uncle that was in the First World War. He was born in 1876. So he joined the army in 1916. So if you work out when he joined and when he was born, he was 40 years old when he joined the army. And the reason for that is because there were so many young men and being killed in the First World War. The army was depreciating, it was getting smaller, so they had to get more recruits. So the older generation started going over, and that's why he joined in 1916 and not the beginning of the war, because he was too old to join the army at that period of time when the war started. So he didn't have a reserve occupation, he was just a greengrocer. And he went through troubles because he didn't go to the First World War. People thought he was a coward. They thought that he should be out there fighting, but they didn't understand that he was too old. And he was given white feathers, which a white feather is a sign of cowardice. So that he got white feathers, and people didn't go to his shop where he worked. They really picked on him. They bullied him.
I'm Evie.
And I'm Neve, and we're here with Steve. So, when did your uncle eventually join the army?
He joined the army in July 1916.
And what regiment was he in?
He joined the South Lancashire Regiment, which was the Prince of Wales' own regiment. So he joined that regiment.
Was he in any battles?
I don't know about him being in any battles, but around the time when he joined, and when a famous battle was going on called Ypres, which is spelled Ypres, Ypres. And in those battles there was different theatres of war, as they called them. And one of the battles was called Passchendaele, which had just been celebrated this year. And my uncle was around that area at that time, but he died before Passchendaele. He was killed.
How was he killed?
I don't know exactly how he was killed, and I don't know exactly where he was killed, but I've got a little bit of information that is taken from a war diary, and a war diary was an account of the days throughout the war which the officers kept to keep a record of the events of particular days that was going on. And on this particular day, it was the 27th of May 1917, and they was in the trenches, and the trench name was Cambridge Trench. And round about 2:35, I think it is, off the top of my head, 5 enemy aircraft, 5 biplanes came over and started to machine gun the trenches. Also, the German artillery opened up and sent over 16 rounds of shells, which are quite big bullets. They're about this big, a shell, and it's like a big bullet, shaped like a bullet. And as far as I know, 1 person was killed and 1 person was wounded, and the person that was wounded was my great uncle, who survived through to the next day but died on the 28th of May 1917, and it was in the area of Ypres. And May was about 4 months before the Battle of Passchendaele, and that's when he died.
Do you know where he was buried?
Well, it's funny this, because how I found out about him was on a gravestone in St Helens, where I originate from. And then I did my family tree, and I found out that he isn't buried in St Helens, he's actually buried in Belgium. And when he died, and they sent, have you heard of the death penny? It's like a big brass, looks like an old penny. They got that, and they also got his belongings, what he had on him when he died. And if you'd like to know what he had on him when he died, I'll tell you. Yeah? He had on him a cloth bag, which was his bag where he kept in. He had a brooch, he had a purse, rosary beads which was broken, a pencil, some letters, 6 buttons, and his most prized possession, false teeth. And all them was sent home to his brother, because his father wasn't alive then, he died. But that's basically the story of my great uncle and his participation in the Great War. Right, so I spoke about my relatives that I know of in the First World War, and I'm here now with
Ethan and Harry.
And I'm going to ask you chaps, did you have any family that was in the First World War?
Well, I do have a great uncle who was in the First World War, and I think he was at the Battle of the Somme, and he survived, I think. And my granddad has his medals. My Auntie found a World War One bullet from the Battle of the Somme, and that's all I know about any relatives in my family.
And what about you?
Mine, he was my great granddad, George Henry Hart, and he was part of the 2nd Grenadier Guards, and he was at Mons, which he survived and was awarded the Mons Star. He also was wounded by a shell in the left shoulder.
Oh. So the Monstar, that's quite a prolific medal. That's quite good. Right, so I know quite a lot about the First World War. I generally know how it all started.
Okay. How did it all start?
Well, there was this guy called Archduke, right, who shot an ostrich because he was hungry. And because everybody loved this ostrich, it all kicked off. What are you laughing at?
It's not right.
What do you mean it's not right?
It's not right.
It's not right.
Well, I suppose you're an expert. I suppose you know how the war started and what.
Ferdinand was assassinated.
Oh no! Stop there! Go on, run that one by me again.
Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated in Austria-Hungary by a
Serbian.
a Serbian citizen who was part of the Black Hand, and then Hungary declared war on Siberia. Germany came to help, and then because Serbia got into war, France came, Germany came, and in 1916, August 1916, we joined the war. 1940.
So do you know anything about this?
Yeah, I know quite a lot.
Go on then.
So what happened was, the French had an agreement with I think it was the Russians, and they said if the Kaiser and Germany attacked Russia, then France would go over and help Russia, and then if Germany crossed the border between Belgium and France, then Russia would go and help them. And the reason why we declared war on Germany is because what they did is that Germany crossed the border between Belgium, and we said if the Germans cross the border between Belgium, they will declare war on them. And in 1916, a couple of years after the war started, the Ottoman Empire joined the war.
Who?
The Ottoman Empire.
Who's them?
They're the
Turkish?
Yeah, the Turkish, I think.
Also, I have another fact. There was a plan called the Von Schlieffen Plan because there were a lot of forts, but they thought Belgium didn't have any, so they tried to go around the back to get the British, but they were surprised in Belgium.
Wasn't that called the Siegfried Line?
No, the Von Schlieffen Plan.
No,
All
that's
right.
the Germans.
Right.
And I also know is that the German had their air force, and there was this pilot. I forgot his name, but it's a German name.
Wasn't he the pilot of the Red Baron?
Yep. And so what
Well, let
he
me
did,
stop you there. Right, I'll tell you his name. It was Balon Von Richthofen.
Yeah.
Yes,
That was his name.
that's what it's called. The Red
And
Baron.
what he did was he did spying, and then the next couple of years he fought for the German Air Force, and I'm sure he was shot down in 1918 and later died on the ground.
Yeah, he was shot down by an allied soldier or a pilot called Charles Brown. He was shot down. What kind of plane did the Red Baron fly? Do you know?
Yeah, I know it was like red and it had the German cross on it.
It had, how many wings did it have?
4. 4? No. 2.
3. It was a triplane.
Triplane.
Yeah. It had where the stop with camel, and the other planes that were biplanes. These was called Fokkers, which is F-O-K-K-E-R, right? I knew you'd laugh at that. And it was a triplane. It was a triplane, yeah? So that's what he flew.
Alright.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. that last bit should be a blooper.
We'll have to get that blooper out, you're laughing. Right. So what battles you know that happened in the First World War?
I know 1917, the Battle of Gaza, which my nan has a shell from it. And Ethan, do you know any?
I know the Battle of the Somme, where we lost a lot of innocent soldiers and nurses and on the Somme. And I think I've forgotten it. There was a battle at the start of the war. It was in near France, I think. So that's the only battle I really know that's really famous.
So we've got the Somme, that's really, everybody talks about the Somme, haven't we? And then we've got Ypres, we've got Arras, we've got the Mesopotamia battles that was going on with the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah, and I know.
And what's been celebrated this year?
The
Centenary
Begins with P. It's just been
um.
Passchendaele,
Oh yeah.
which a lot of Canadians was involved in that one.
I do know, at the beginning, near the beginning of the First World War, 1915, a year after it started, there was this passenger liner called the Lusitania, and it was hit by two German torpedoes.
Yeah, it was hit by 2 German torpedoes.
And there was 124 Americans lost their lives on the ship, and remaining 300 survived, because there was 1,000, I think, on the ship. And what they did was, I think the man of the U-boat that sank it, I think he went to German High Command, and I think he was kicked, he was, I don't know, sacked, I'll just say sacked, from being a U-boat officer.
So why did they sink a passenger liner?
Because what happened is that they tried, because there was supplies coming in from like America and North Africa and things like that, for food and things.
Did they think it was a supply ship?
Yep. And they shot a torpedo at it, and they critically attacked American ships.
Yeah, they torpedoed the Lusitania because they thought it was carrying arms. They thought it was bringing weapons over as well.
The Britannic hit a mine.
And when it blew up with such force that that's what everybody thought, that it had gunpowder. But later on they found out, or the theory is now, that it wasn't carrying weapons. The reason why it exploded so violently,
didn't they hit
it was the coal.
Engines?
Yeah, it was the coal that was in there, because there was steam, so they was driven by coal, and in coal you get methane gas, and the gas had collected up in the coal, so when it hit it blew up.
Also, I remember there were Germany had a plan where they were trying to starve the British. They're trying to cut off all of their supplies and starve them.
I know this. At the end of the war, near the end of the war, a couple of days before it ended, Germany were losing all the supplies, all the food, and all that, because they were losing the war and the trenches were all destroyed. So what they did was they turned to the Ottoman Empire and said, "Can you help us out with supplies and troops?" So what they did was the Ottoman Empire helped them out with troops and supplies. And what happened at the end of the war, the reason why it stopped, I think it's because Kaiser Wilhelm II was kicked off the throne, and he had to flee to Holland, so he flew to Holland and just was exiled there till 1941, and he died in 1941.
Have you ever heard of a place called Gallipoli?
Yes, I think, because I've been to Turkey.
Yeah, so the British was landed there. Do you know who else was there as well? as well as the British.
Was it the French and the Canadians?
Australians.
Mm.
The Australians were there, and the New Zealand, which was at Gallipoli. The British pulled out, and the Australians was left, and they defended it, and they took a lot of casualties. They was fighting the Turks. But you know quite a lot. Have you any pictures? Did you say you brought some pictures?
No, but yes. All I know is that I have a World War One bullet and things.
So what's these then? Who
They're
are these?
Sebastians.
Right. Do you want to have a talk about Sebastians?
Sebastian's there.
Come on, Sebastian.
I don't know much about his great grandfather, but I know that this is his.
Hold it up and point to the camera.
This is his. I think it's his great granddad.
And these were some letters that were found
That one.
in his pocket.
And
World War
we know
One.
that he told us that he had died and written
Those-
letters, but they never reached home. He's the one who survived.
That's sad, isn't it?
Yeah, so I got those.
Well, you certainly know
There he is.
quite a lot, and you've
Main
done
man
all your
himself.
research and that on the First World War.
Yeah.
So I think we should end it there.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah, we know quite a lot.
Well done, give him a round of applause.
Oh, sorry.